Welcome everyone to this latest installment of the Science of Where for Sustainable Development webinar series. This is actually our fourth webinar in our series, and it's on the topic of monitoring and evaluation for sustainable development programs. Today I'm joined by my colleague, Adam Pfister. Maybe if you could just introduce yourself, Adam.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Pfister. I work out of our Esri Chicago office on the nonprofit and NGO team, and on the team with Brendan supporting customers and various types of spaces and industries across a lot of different applications. Excited to be talking about our topic today.
Yeah, and I'm Brendan O'Neill. I'm also a solution engineer on our nonprofits and global organization team. I actually operate out of Washington, D.C., support a lot of the organizations here, as well as UN agencies and nonprofits abroad. Um, Today, just before we get started, I was hoping to draw your attention to a few items. First, all the past recordings for the webinar series are available at the landing page, which is go.esri.com/SDG webinar series. We have a few topics there. We did one on story maps for the sustainable development goals. We did one on GIS solutions, and the last entry in the series was presented by the logistics cluster and World Food Program. They did a great job presenting on some of the applications of technology for program planning. I encourage you to take a look at that. On that same URL, you can also sign up for our final webinar series later this year in November. That's going to be on engaging stakeholders and beneficiaries. It'll be the same time at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll have a time change then, and that will be on Tuesday, November 14th. Another reminder is in the GoToWebinar panel, you do have the ability to submit questions there. So we won't be looking at the questions while we're presenting, but we will take a look at those after the presentation. We'll have a Q&A session where we'll sort through some of those and answer those that we can, and any that we can't, we can follow up with you with email. We should have your email from registration. And one final reminder is just to help us improve on the webinar series. You know, we only have one more this year, but we'd like to improve on the work we've been doing this year for next year's offerings. So please fill out the survey at the end to let us know what you think. All right, so I think what I wanted to set things off with today is you know, we're going to be talking about new ways to collect information from the field so they can be visualized and analyzed and hopefully bring insight into how your programs are performing. But you know, the way that we've done this has evolved from what you see here, working with standalone devices, with either to capture locations, with maybe navigation devices that can lead us to those areas of capture. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of experience of capturing waypoints and entering them into notebooks, attribute information there, maybe bring it into Excel as an intermediary step, and then bring it into some sort of desktop application. Maybe you remember using ArcView. But really, the way that we're doing that kind of capture and visualize and analyze, that's really necessary for monitoring and evaluation or programs. It's changed. Now we have a complete platform that can help us do this. It's the ArcGIS platform. It can be implemented in the cloud or on your own architecture. It really centers around this idea of having a GIS portal where you can unlock data and capabilities and make it accessible on desktop applications, through the web, through web applications, but also on mobile applications and other APIs. And ultimately, with the ArcGIS platform, we're able to support reporting, monitoring, and evaluating. These are the key concepts that we think about from a GIS perspective in ways that we can support monitoring and evaluation. So when we talk about reporting, we're thinking about extracting information from the field, either through surveys or satellite imagery. so that we can look at how activities are unfolding there. With monitoring, we're looking to not only track the state of reporting efforts, but also get a real-time look into the information that has been reported, so that we can look at trends and possibly iterate if we are able to implement a more agile approach to our M&E activities in the field. And lastly, with evaluating, we really want to look at visualizing. In the case of GIS analysis, maybe even deep spatial analysis, to determine the efficacy of our projects, and hopefully help us make decisions on how we can do things differently. So what I thought would be useful is to dig a little deeper into how ArcGIS can support these different activities. So if we look at reporting, from Esri's perspective, we really break this down into field operations, into different categories of planning, coordinating, navigating, and capturing and monitoring not only our workforce that's in the field, but also the information that's coming in. So if we dig a little deeper into each of these sections, in the planning phase, for example, we might implement or we might use ArcGIS Desktop. This can help us do some of the preliminary data management and analysis that'll help us prepare for our operations. It'll also allow us to design database schemas, for example, so that we can align with the key indicators that can help us identify whether our programs are being effective. And we can finally publish these database schemas up to our GIS portal, whether in ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. So it's accessible by all those mobile or web applications there. So desktop's a big component of our planning phase. But then when we get into the coordinate, navigate, capture, and monitor phase, we look at a few other applications. Workforce for ArcGIS, for example, is a relatively new application. It helps us coordinate our workers and the tasks that they perform in the field. There's a web-based component that allows us to dispatch jobs to our mobile workforce that can consume or that can view those tasks through a mobile application. So it helps us keep keep track of the status of our workforce and what they're doing in the field. So there, like I said, there's two basic components: a back office dispatcher, a field app, and it really allows us to close the loop on communicating between the field and the office. One note: it's mostly web-based. So although you can take your tasks into the field, you will have to have some degree of connectivity to download those tasks onto your mobile device. Navigator is another application that helps us wayfind to the places that we're working. Okay, so it uses Esri's data network, our network service, to navigate from either a user-defined location to a user-defined destination, or in the case of workforce, we can actually have a dispatcher assigned location that Navigator works with in order to get that person to the location where they need to make observations or do their work. Importantly, Navigator works offline, so you can cache the network that Esri provides, or you can even integrate your own network and publish that up to the web and cache it down to the mobile phone. I think of recent conversation I have with World Food Program, where in Madagascar they have networks that span the different waterways that allow them to deliver food, and that's all a part of their network model. So they can take that network model, publish it to the web, and then consume it from Navigator in a disconnected environment. We also have the ability to link between different applications. So through this app link API, we can string together Workforce, Navigator, and then our other field collection apps like Collector, for example. So with Collector, oops, sorry, a little fast there. Collector is meant more for map-centric data collection. So it allows you to collect points, lines, and polygons in the area that you're working with. You can also tether high accuracy GPS units, which with the most recent release actually Collector allows you to capture the metadata coming off those high accuracy GPS units as well. You can load all of your own base maps up there if you want, as well as you know, if you have high accuracy satellite imagery or drone imagery, for example, you can use that to digitize in the field, for example. One recent success case we've heard with Collector is using these high accuracy GPS units with the mobile data app and in Colombia, actually, where there's disputed boundaries for land ownership, and they had individuals who had abutting properties go out with Collector and these land units and walk the extent of their property. So with those as their baseline, then they were able to start negotiations on where the actual land ownership lines should be divided, so that they can solve any disputes there. Survey 123 is a little bit of a different application. Adam's going to be showing you a little bit more about this later. But essentially, with Survey 123, it's a mobile application, but it also delivers capabilities through the web and a desktop application, where you can essentially create these really robust surveys with logic using XLS forms, and you're able to either create these really easily through an interactive web interface, or you can use Survey 123 Connect that allows you to use the logic in those XLS forms to create really rich, really rich surveys. Once your surveys have been spun up, you can share those with others, and they can be consumed either on the mobile devices or even just through the browser. And there's some other tools that are great with Survey 123, like the ability to take a look at the Analyze dashboard, where you can monitor the progress of your data collection activities and in addition to seeing any trends that are developing in your data, again, you get a near real-time picture of the information you're collecting so that you can be agile and respond to that, and maybe change your programs as you're going along. Lastly, I don't think we necessarily think of drone imagery or satellite imagery when we think of traditional monitoring and evaluation activities. But imagery collection is data captured just the same, right? So we can use either recreational or commercial grade drones and easily create 2D and 3D information products. For example, you can create high accuracy orthomosaics. You can create LiDAR point clouds, 3D mesh services. And once you've created these information products from these imagery catalogs, which are very easy to create, it's a matter of pointing the application to your folder and setting the types of information products you want to output. And then with a few clicks, that will run on your machine. And at that point, it's very easy to publish these back up to the web, to your GIS portal, where they can be consumed in all the other applications, whether it's web applications or Collector, for example. So it's a really exciting tool that it gets out of your traditional M&E workflows, but we see it as a trend, using satellite imagery and also drone imagery to help with our monitoring and evaluation activities. And I think before we move on to the monitoring section of the presentation, I think it's important to note that there's a really well-documented workflow for performing these field operations with the apps I just showed you in either low bandwidth or no bandwidth environments. What it constitutes is managing your data, maybe authoring your maps on a desktop application, publishing these up to your portal, whether that portal is ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. There we can prepare our maps, whether we want to use them for data collection or possibly to create dashboards that we'll see next. Once those web maps have been prepared, it's really easy to download them to your mobile device using a data format called a mobile map package that allows you to take your tiled base maps, your operational layers, as well as routing services, for example. You can store those all locally on a device that's disconnected. Once you're in the field, you can query that data, you can view it, you can make changes to it. And then when you're in a connected environment, you synchronize that back up to the web. Okay, so it's a very well documented workflow. A lot of people, when we talk about this web GIS pattern of having a GIS portal in the cloud, they say, oh, well, what about disconnected environments? Well, it's something that we've been working on very hard in order to allow you to take that data out into the field, work with it, and then sync that back up to the web. So that capability is there. So the next section I wanted to talk to you about is a little bit about monitoring. So the last section we focused on data collection and also, I guess, optimizing that those data collection activities in the field. But as you're bringing in information, what can you do with it? Well, if we look at our little diagram once again, we kind of went around the horn from using ArcGIS Desktop to plan our database schemas, publish those up to the web. Then when it's in the web, we can start to use apps like Workforce, Navigator, Survey 123, or Collector, even in disconnected environments. But as we're capturing that data, we can funnel it into different types of dashboards. And you can configure these dashboards even before you begin collecting. And you can configure a number of different dashboards for a number of different purposes. And a few key features that they're really easy to create, and they can help you track the progress of your field operations. It also lets you contextualize your operations by giving you the ability to bring in different data sources. For example, real-time weather feeds that might affect your programs. We also have the ability to create different dashboards or apps that allow us to do QA and QC on our data on the fly and visualize trends in the data so that we can be agile and change as we're implementing our programs. So one ways of generating one of these dashboards or applications is using configurable web app templates. These are really easy to deploy. Essentially, once you've prepared your web map, you can spin one of these up. They're generally focused on a specific task, and there's some really great options that I think align really well with monitoring and evaluation activities. We can see here in the image, the filter tool is great. This web app. I really like the impact summary as a way to aggregate your disaggregated data and see what's going on with it. The summary viewer is also another great one, and then the time aware application as well. So you can take a look at time slices of your data and see if there's trends over time. Maybe a particular team working in a certain area, and maybe that tailed off, and trying to ask yourself why that is. So you get a real-time insight or near real-time insight into what's going on into the field. A good example of this is this impact summary dashboard that was created by the World Food Program in Yemen. It's a great application. It combines textual information you can see in the panel to the left. It sits on top of their live databases, so they just wire that in, expose the data as services and layers, and bring it directly into these applications. It allows you to summarize the data by country as well as province, and displays these nice dashboard updates down in the bottom that address people in need, the planned beneficiaries, the actual beneficiaries, and the total food distributed. Another great tool for generating these dashboards or applications is Web App Builder for ArcGIS. This is one of my favorite tools that is available through ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. The reason being is it's really easy to use. You can generate capabilities or sets of capabilities by adding widgets to different user interfaces. You can change the user interface depending on what your need is. So you can deliver capabilities, information through different interfaces with different tools, but it's also extensible. So if you have some in-house JavaScript capabilities or Or even if you want to tap in, there's a really large community of people developing these widgets. It's a great tool to generate these dashboards. Um, the new dashboard theme is especially exciting for me. You can see it here with this urban search and rescue dashboard that was created with Web App Builder um, by the people that are responding down in Puerto Rico right now. You can deliver not just data, but you can also incorporate these different infographic widgets that can give you a sense of what's going on with your data in real time. So it's a really great way of closing the loop on capturing data, but also seeing what that data looks like. This is a really simple example of a web app builder application that uh, used satellite imagery from Mali, provided by Digital Globe. It basically gives a look at um, the area of Timbuktu before and after the projects that they were implementing took place. It's really simple. It's not really a traditional M&E type application, but you can see how effective it is by using the before and after satellite imagery with this really simple swipe widget and bookmarked areas where these projects were going underway. You can see visual representations of whether those development projects were being effective or not. So it's a simple tool, but very, very useful. Lastly, I wanted to talk to you about our more traditional dashboard, which is our operations dashboard for ArcGIS. So you can see similarities to, say, that dashboard theme widget that we saw with Web App Builder. You're essentially able to incorporate charts, gauges, histograms that give you views not only of the data that you're collecting from devices like or applications like Survey123 or Collector, but you can also pipe in those real-time feeds, whether it's weather feeds. Here we have MODIS thermal activity, and it's extensible as well. So you can create some custom widgets and tools that you can incorporate into your dashboards. There's been a lot of work on Operations Dashboard over the last year or two, and there should be a release coming out by the end of the year. Right now, there's a big beta release in October, just recently, that allows you to work with your dashboards, your different dashboards. There's more capabilities for, say, generating multiple layouts with your web application. And for those of you who are familiar with the application, the old .NET authoring experience before has evolved. So with the new release, you'll be able to generate these dashboards directly through the web interface rather than having to design them locally and then publish them up to the web. So now that we've kind of taken a look at reporting, capturing data, improving the efficiency which we do that, and also took a look at some of the dashboards that we can generate through web templates or web app builder or operations dashboard to see how that data is being collected and keep track of the progress of our capture, and also getting looks into the data itself. I think it makes sense to take a look at evaluating this information so that we can refine our strategies. So depending on who you work for, reporting on your programs may be the final step, but obviously that's not optimal, right? We want to be able to report on our programs, but then through either analysis or just visualization of our data, be able to iterate on that, identify significance in the data that we've collected, and then iterate on that concept so that we can do a better job with our programs in the future. So we can leverage the analytical capabilities of ArcGIS in order to do that. So just right out of the box, it's really simple to visualize the key indicators that we're trying to capture in our programs to determine whether we're being effective. So for example, if we're doing household surveys to determine whether women are going to their prenatal visits that are required, or that you're trying to track in this program, we can look and see if there's any trends, spatially or otherwise, pretty simple using ArcGIS. We can also look for gaps in service or potentially unmet needs. So if we know the locations where we're working, where we're interviewing, we have services provided, but in those indicators that we're really trying to track and then look at, we can see whether the areas where we're providing service has any impact on those needs, or if there's areas that might require service that we have neglected in previous um, programs. The other thing that we can do is take a look at where people are working, not just our organization, but maybe there's opportunities to coordinate with other stakeholders that are working towards the same objectives that we are. We can optimize donor flows so that we're not doing the same thing twice, or possibly leading um, to beneficiary fatigue with multiple organizations working in the same area. We can also get into really deep spatial analysis, right? So a lot of what we just talked about is just visual overlay, bringing in different data, whether it's indicators, sites for benefit where we've been working with beneficiaries, and information with other types of data. But we can also take a look at that data and apply heavy analytics to it. So for those of you who are new to GIS, there are literally hundreds of tools, if not thousands of tools available that can help you mine your data for spatial significance. And if you've been doing this for a while, you can see here just a selection. There are a lot of new and improving tools that are available through the ArcGIS platform. I think some of the highlights are some of the web-based analysis. So we've always had some sort of web-based analysis in ArcGIS Online, but we really moved into being able to do some of the basic data management. I think of joining features, for example, so bringing different layers, joining those attribute tables together, getting derivative data sets. That's something simple, but it's very, very useful. And it brings some of the capabilities that GIS professionals have traditionally done in heavy desktop applications to the web in a lightweight manner. So it's kind of democratized some of those tools. Aggregation is another great low-hanging fruit where you can do a lot of work with either bringing in your own geographies or possibly generating hexabins or triangular coverages to look at how data is distributed over a given space. I'm really excited about our ability to integrate with different science packages as well. There's been a lot of work put into the ArcGIS API for Python that allows you to work with Jupyter notebooks and the Python scientific libraries to throw these heavy scientific modules at the geographic data that you've spent a lot of money and time and investing in and capturing. The integration with R is something that I find very exciting as well. So being able to connect your R modules or leverage really the R community with the what is it, like 9,000 different libraries that are out there. Leverage all the great tool set that's being developed in that community and bringing it to your GIS data, or vice versa, bringing your GIS data to those modules. So imagine compiling your own R models and then creating a toolbox that could be leveraged by other GIS professionals in your organization, or even one step further, generating that processing tool and publishing it out as a service so that it can be utilized in different web applications or even mobile applications. So another area that we've been really focused on is space-time. So we not only look at Tobler's second law, where like things are more like things that are close to them through space, but we're also investigating that through time. So being able to to slice information not only geographically but also temporally, and looking at trends and how we can find meaning in that. So another tool that's kind of, we're talking about, I guess, more heavy spatial analysis, but Insights for ArcGIS is a great tool that's been developed that kind of follows that 80-20 rule, where it's excellent at connecting to different data sets and visualizing data for exploratory data analysis, but it also has some of those spatial analytical tools, the deep analytical tools, the ones that are most heavily used. So we're able to do nice analysis in here, but it's also just great for connecting to different data sets across your organization, and being able to explore that. Look at the different variables, whether they're categorical or quantitative, and aggregating them or disaggregating them to find trends in the data that can be spatial or non-spatial. And I think what's great about this is it's one of these democratizing tools where you can bring a lot of these great GIS capabilities to any knowledge worker, anyone that is familiar with working with spreadsheets or business information systems. Um, they're able to use insights and again leverage that information that you've been collecting through some of the applications. There's been a lot of development here. There's new charting types that come with every release. They're on a really fast release cycle for this. So they're trying to get new capabilities out as fast as possible. And I think one of the really important developments with Insights is that this December, with the December release of ArcGIS Online, it should be available there in ArcGIS Online as a application. So you can leverage all your local information, spreadsheets, CSV files, things like that, or connect to your enterprise databases, but also leverage that great GIS information that you've been working on in ArcGIS Online. Right now, it's only available through ArcGIS Enterprise, but in a couple months' time, that should be coming online. So an example of this, just a really simple one, is doing this kind of overlay analysis where you can bring in your different program sites, overlay it with your key indicator information, in this case literacy, and take a look at how where you're working aligns with the indicators that you're trying to address. In addition, if you share out your project sites and you have other stakeholders that are not necessarily within your organization, then you can look for synergies that exist between organizations. So it's a really powerful tool. As I said, you can bring in different types of data, toy with the different variables, and do that exploratory data analysis. But it also has some good spatial analytical tools as well. So up to this point, we've kind of talked about tools that are made available through the ArcGIS platform through reporting that allow you to monitor your data and then also evaluate it. But I thought before we get into a demo section where Adam's going to show us some of the workflows that'll help you get started with Survey 123 and I believe Web App Builder, I just wanted to give a few quick tips that I've kind of learned through working with different organizations, specifically that are kind of in more standard monitoring and evaluation type workflows. And when you read some of these, they seem kind of simple and apparent, but if you can abide by some of these principles, then the way that you collect information and ultimately find meaning in it will go a lot easier. So the first tip is to organize your data around dimensions of who, what, when, and where. So this is essential in being able to do any analysis after the fact. And we need to have a clear picture of what the data we want, what we want to collect, or what we want to do with the data when we've worked with it. So when we're thinking about individuals, we want to know, or sorry, about people, If we're collecting data about people, we want to know, is it an individual? Do we want to have personal identifiable information at the individual level? Are we looking at categories of individuals, maybe along lines of sex or geographic region? Or are we just looking at observations of quantity for individuals? And when we're thinking about the what, what is it? Is it an object? Is it a thing, a feature, a part of our physical landscape, or is it an event or an observation? And importantly, I think with time, things get not complicated, but you need to consider this. You need to, when we're thinking about the dimension of time, is it a time of day, or is it a particular date, or perhaps a month, a year, or a range that doesn't necessarily align with those ideas, or sorry, those divisions. And then, of course, when we're coming at it from a GIS perspective, what are we looking at? Are we looking at a point, a line, a polygon, or surface? So if we can take a look at these dimensions in our data preparation phase, and have clear sense of what some of the evaluation models that we're looking at, then and it'll make things a lot easier as we get to that step. Another tip is enforced data validation. So when we're thinking of maybe setting something up in ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, use domain values, use subtypes. This limits the opportunity for error for either our field workers or those of us doing QA/QC. In tools like Survey123 with XLS forms, there's even more capabilities for doing this data validation. So if you're collecting both the age of an individual and a age range for an individual, you can enforce some logic that will not allow you to enter certain values, for example. So getting to that point, think about your indicators before you design your surveys or collect your data. So it seems common sense, but it's often overlooked. So people will collect their information, their disaggregated values, and then at the end of their analysis, they say, oh, I want to do this. Or sorry, at the end of their collection period, I want to do this type of analysis. And then maybe a data scientist or someone who's crunching those numbers say, well, we can't do that because we don't have the necessary disaggregations and disaggregated values to do that. So there's a big difference. You may be collecting information in a similar way, but there's a big difference from our first example where we have our aggregation value of male, 23 years old, and having a family versus male, 18 to 26, married and with 2 children. So we're collecting information about marital status or family, but in 2 different, very different ways that allow us to do different things with data visualization or analysis after the fact. So another tip to keep in mind is that data storage is not data presentation. So we kind of have a fancy example here of a visualization of drought conditions through time versus just our features with our attribute table on the left. So your data presentation could be a number of different things, whether they're geographic or non-geographic. They could be charts or graphs. They could be maps that are animated or not animated. And they could be capabilities that are presented to your user base that'll allow them to either filter information, query information, interact with information that's necessary to them. So we need to think about storing data, capturing data versus visualizing it, presenting it, possibly telling a narrative with it, like we have here in the story map example to the right. And the last one is kind of related to the earlier tip. The data types you capture affect how you can visualize or analyze it. So again, this gets back to that point of thinking about what you want to do with your information after you've collected it. So just a few tips. There's loads more, but I feel like those are kind of 5 that really resonate me when we're looking at the activities that are going on with our user base that's doing monitoring and evaluating activities. So with that, maybe we can turn it over to Adam and get a look at how we can actually use some of these tools. There we go. You there, Adam?
I am.
Great. And I'm seeing your screen, so I'm going
Okay.
to go on mute and then turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Brendan. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through two applications, Survey123 as well as Web App Builder for ArcGIS. And we're going to start with Survey123. So like Brendan said, it's XLS form based, so it's an open standard, something that we've used to build this application to allow people that are familiar with that to very quickly get up and running with creating forms, so they don't have to spend a lot of time in having to know the details of things like feature services, tables, relationships. What Survey123 will do is kind of abstract a lot of that for you. So all you need to do is work within Excel. Each row within a worksheet is essentially a question, and you can configure your forms-based mobile application very quickly, get it out to people in the field and start collecting data. So I wanted to start on the homepage here just to give you an idea, maybe set a reference point, something that you can all go to and check out, get some key points about what Survey123 is, how it works, the key features of it, and then also see some examples about how it's used, some case studies in the nonprofit and the education sectors, dealing with asset inspection, census, disasters, etc. These are all real world examples that are very useful to look at and reference if you're thinking about getting started with Survey123. And then of course, we do our best to make our help sections and documentation as robust as possible. So with the help section, especially for Survey123, there are a lot of resources here for you to get started. Frequently asked questions. There's a very active community on GeoNet where you can go and see what other people are talking about, post your own question if you're seeing an issue, some technical support. The Survey123 videos are on YouTube. A lot of them are very short as far as duration, but that's done on purpose. So it's a key point to get you up and running or starting a form, or maybe some advanced techniques with questions. That team has done a great job in documenting the steps for getting up and running. So if you wanted to download Survey123, there's a link right here, and it would pop you over to this page, and then you can pick your platform. So Survey123 Connect, you can see that here on the left-hand side, that's the application that we'll start in. We'll start there because that's a very robust way for you to create your survey. So I'm gonna switch over to my desktop here, and you should be seeing that on the screen. And you can see I've started up Survey123 Connect for ArcGIS. When I sign in, I can see some surveys that I'm already working with. I can choose to create a new survey, and I can pick different templates to start from. There's a basic template that it's just a good starting point if you want to get your hands dirty with it and check it out and see what's available. You can click the advanced template that will sort of open all the doors for you, or you can choose some other samples. If you want to work with something for your people will be out in the field and you want to know how to incorporate things like scanning a barcode, there's a sample for that. Or you can calculate choices from a list, bring in data sources from a CSV file. There are even things that are out there from the community that are being shared, and you can use those as a base to get started. But I'm going to pull up one right now that's sort of a demographic census style survey, but I wanted to give you an idea of the things that are possible. So you can see I'm viewing a preview right now of this survey. And if I want to start editing it, I can click that little button that looks like a worksheet, and it actually opens up Excel for me. And like I said before, each row in my worksheet is going to be a question in my survey. So I have this, who is the head of the household? Well, that's actually going to be a radio selection, so the user will choose from 3 different options. And I can choose those lists looking at this different sheet here. So this is where I'm setting up a list. I've got this male, female, both name. Here are the options and here are the labels. That's what they see when they on the survey. And then when I'm creating my survey, I say it's a select one type and I want to use this male, female, both list. So then when I save the survey, I get these options here, male, female, both. So that type of control over the type of question that you set for the survey will help you reduce data input errors, and it'll help in the data quality process as well. So I can show you exactly how this works. Who is the head of the household? If you wanted to change the type or the title of the question and say, please enter the head of the household. I've chosen this appearance as horizontal compact, which means it'll lay out the questions horizontally. But if I just want the default view, I'll change that. And when I click save in my Excel sheet, you can see it cranking in the background here. It's actually going to give me a live preview of that. So my title has changed and my layout has changed as well. So very quickly, you're able to see the changes that you make. And there are a lot of different ways to control information or control the things that the user is seeing as they're going through the survey. So for this particular head of the household question, I don't want any constraints because there's no constraints. I can mark it as being required and say, yes, it's required. So the user can't submit the survey until they actually fill that out. And you can give them a message saying this is a required field. And again, when you click on save, you can see the changes come back. We now have a red star next to that question indicating that's a required field. So the other thing I wanted to show you is you can actually constrain input. So this next question is, what is the age of the person? And we're saying that the number has to be between 0 and 150. So if I enter in something like 600, I'm going to see an error message saying you need to enter a value from 1 to 150. And the survey will not be able to be entered until you fill out a valid value. And the appearance has changed as well. So the user can't enter in any text, any A, B, C, D characters. They have to enter purely numbers. So that's another way to control the data that's being entered in. So you can get pretty detailed in how you structure these questions. You can have groups of questions. So I'm looking at a demographic group here. There's also one on health. You can see I've actually structured this one sample question on housing based on a rating type of question. You can actually go and repeat these questions. So if you want the people out in the field to collect the same set of questions multiple times, you can specify that this field should repeat 5 times, or it should repeat as many times as the field reporter needs it to repeat. So you have a lot of control over how this data gets captured and all working within a familiar environment that is Excel. So once you're ready and you're done authoring the survey, you can then share that up to ArcGIS Online. So that happens, just click the publish survey button and that goes right into your account. And then if you choose, if it's already running or if you choose to make it public, the people out in the field can then use their mobile device to download it and begin collecting data. So now I'd like to switch over to what you would see when you log in online on Survey 123. You have the same view of those surveys that we're just seeing on the desktop, but now we're in the browser. Okay, so we see that household survey example. I can choose to go ahead and pull that up and share and make that public with everybody. Meaning we're okay, now we're ready to actually deploy this survey out into the field. We want to start collecting data. And you can see the different types of settings that you have available to you for this particular survey. You can actually pop it open in a tab in a browser and see what it's going to look like when you sign in and when you bring it up in a browser. So you have a web view as well. And this type of thing can be embedded in a website, and you can pull it into a lot of different, your own website if you want to use it internally, or have it as a public survey into an open data site, you can do that too. What's also really interesting is as the data is out there being collected, You want a view of what those answers are, right? So I want to be able to see how this survey is doing. You know, by question, I can see the count of people that have responded, male, female, or both, to this particular question. I can view that as different types of visualizations, column charts. I can see the information in a map, and it's symbolized for me. And I can actually print the current view as well. So I can get a printout of this information. So now what's really interesting about this is that in the latest release of the Survey 123 website here, in the latest update, I can actually use a custom print template. So that's pretty interesting, because then I can say, for each question, format it this particular way. And that's done using a Microsoft Word document print template. So again, we're using some kind of well-established things people are already familiar, excuse me, familiar with, that you can add some of your own customization to this particular application. So now looking at the data tab, excuse me, we're now able to actually get a raw data view, and I can download that information in a variety of formats. I can filter it by time. I can download all the data or just the filtered information. So you see, you kind of have that abstract view of the data coming in, the question by question result information, as well as the access to the raw survey information. And you can actually come in and create a new survey through this web interface as well. I won't go into that now, but the way that this is being developed is we want to give people the option, if they don't have access to the desktop software, if they can't use it to create a survey, they can simply log in and create one through the web here. So switching over to Web App Builder, this is a configurable application, and it allows you to kind of drag and drop widgets onto your application as a canvas and create these custom applications. So these things can run online, you can run them on your own server. They're open source, so you can actually, it provides you a framework to develop your own custom widgets. So there's a ton of widgets out of the box for you to use that we as Esri provide. Things like querying, filtering, attribute table, measuring distance, some kind of core GIS things along with some extra widgets. But you can also build your own within this Web App Builder framework. So that's really nice. It gives you the tools to get started very quickly. And this is available, again, it's documented very well here. So I encourage you to take a look at that if that's something that you're interested in. But what we're going to do is take a look at how you'd actually fire one of these up, and then show a real world example of something that's being used right now. So we're going to start with just some locations on a map, some generic locations that I've pulled in. And this map can be shared after you save it here. And when you choose to share a web map within ArcGIS Online, again, you can choose to say who you're sharing it with. You just click this create a web map button, and you have a lot of different options. And Brendan was showing you a screenshot of this before. You can actually build a story map from this web map. You can choose a template that allows you to collect data or edit data, do some crowdsourcing information. If you want to route or get directions, there are templates there as well. And there's also this tab up here for Web App Builder. And when we do that, it's actually going to launch us into this building experience. And I've already got that open here on the tab right here. And when it launches, it gives me that web map that I was just looking at, the same layers, everything that's listed in there, the same base map. And it lets me configure how I want the application experience to look like. So if I want to change the themes, I can go to this box theme. Maybe I want to put the box in the top right corner. And I want to actually check out this Launchpad theme. And what's also great about this experience is I can preview how this is going to look on different devices. So this is a mobile-friendly, responsive web application, and I can see how it's going to look on an iPad and various other mobile devices too. So Brandon was mentioning the new dashboard theme. That's a really interesting theme here that's come out, and we can actually choose that theme. There's a couple different layouts, different colors, and if you want to start placing widgets on the canvas, see as I mouse over, it's going to tell me that that's the spot that the widget is going to be dropped into. And here's a listing of all the widgets that we provide out of the box for Web App Builder. Things like filtering, what's near me, basic querying. But for this, we'll pick an infographic. And then I just want to give you an example of the type of things that are available. So there's summary statistics like numbers. There's a gauge chart to show you percentages or threshold information. You can do basic charting as well, pies, columns, bars. All that can be driven from the layers and information that's on the map. So once that's configured, you can actually launch that application directly from the builder. You can also go in and change things like the title, choose to use the branding from your organization. So you can actually lock it down so that the branding will be inherited as it's set by administrators, so that people creating applications won't necessarily be able to change the colors or add their own custom logo. You can just choose to use your own corporate branding if you have that. So that's Web App Builder. I wanted to end with an example of how it's being used right now for some hurricane relief for Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Now, this example is using that new dashboard theme, and we're looking at the status of bridges after the hurricane hit. So when I zoom in, you can see that all the data is going to change. It's all built to respond over the map extent that I'm looking at. So where are these are crowdsourced reports, incidents of roads being closed, bridges collapsing, flooding in this particular area. And you can see on the map, we actually have camera feeds coming in. I can click on a camera and get the last time it was updated and view information and get a near real-time view of what's going on in the particular area. We can see the number of open bridges in this spot, the number of closed bridges, and actually I have access to all of the data in an attribute table as well. So if I wanted to filter by a particular attribute, I can do that too, all from this interface. So these are being used. There's 2 or 3 more examples that I've seen for Puerto Rico specifically, but I know there are hundreds and hundreds of applications being used in specifically for disaster relief for the hurricanes that we've experienced in the past couple of months. So I'd encourage you to take a look at Web App Builder, take a look at the gallery of apps that are being put out there, follow some of the Esri Twitter accounts for Esri apps. Those are incredibly useful, not only for tips and tricks and documentation, but for examples like these, how it's being used in the real world as well, because that's really where we get excited, kind of as Esri staff, is to see people using it in the real world, and then for Brendan and I, to see people using it for humanitarian response, nonprofit response is incredibly exciting, and we love to see it working like that and to help out where we can. So with that, I'll maybe throw it back to Brendan for a recap, and we can answer any questions that have come up.
Thanks, Adam. That was really great. So the last example, for example, it's not necessarily those traditional M&E workflows, but you can really see how it's how the technology is being leveraged to get information and visualize it and get status reports on the conditions in real time. So I thought that was a really good example. It's really exciting, and the stuff you showed for Survey 123 is really helpful. I think people can see how they might be able to apply those technologies to their own workflow. So before we get to the Q&A, I just wanted to have a couple reminders. Again, we have the past recordings at go.esri.com/SDG webinar series. And then just a reminder to tune in to our final webinar for this year, which will be engaging stakeholders and beneficiaries. And that's Tuesday, November 14th, 2017 at 8:30 a.m. So encourage you to sign up there. And with that, There's still opportunities for you to drop your questions in the GoToWebinar panel. I have a couple questions for Adam that I recorded. But if there are any other questions about the technologies we showed you or anything else, please drop them in the box and we'll go from there. Okay, so Adam, I've got a couple questions. Two questions actually related to Survey 123 and I guess the dashboards as a concept. So one person was asking, you know, you showed Survey 123 Connect and you showed the web version to create a new survey. I guess they're asking about the relative ease with orienting oneself to Survey 123 Connect versus say doing the web survey, and I guess what are the advantages and disadvantages of them?
Yeah, great question. So I guess the advantages are having it available to you in the desktop and the browser. You know, that's kind of a simple answer, but that's pretty straightforward. I think from the beginning of Survey 123, it started kind of as a pet project, as a lab sort of R&D Esri initiative, and then we saw a tremendous uptake in usage and for a couple different campaigns for fighting polio and vaccinations. And the team that developed it decided this is bigger than just sort of a fun thing that we decided to create one day. So once that kind of made its way out into the wild and more people got excited about it, one of the first requests where people were saying is, can we work with this through a browser, right? Because we don't necessarily have access to use the desktop software, or we don't have access to use Excel. So that's been in the works for a while, and it's exciting to see both the desktop and the browser versions kind of work off of each other. And at the moment, maybe if you could call it a disadvantage, it's just more of a thing to be aware of. It's that some of the features in the browser aren't necessarily available in the desktop and vice versa. And that's fully documented on the Survey 123 site.
Mm,
So we'd encourage you to go take a look there and see what's most appropriate for your use case.
great. So I guess to summarize, there's kind of disadvantages, advantages to both. They're really just kind of work for different types of surveys that you're trying to create. Whether you just want to spin something up quick and easy, or you want to use like some of the more robust Excel form capabilities. But to really, if you want to understand it better, check out the documentation. It's well documented there, and can go from there. Thanks for that. So another question for you. Um, you showed the analyze dashboard for Survey 123. The question is, how is that different from, say, the dashboard that you could create with Web App Builder or Operations Dashboard or the configurable web app templates, for example? This looks like they're different. So could you maybe explain a little bit about the Analyze dashboard and the dashboard that you might create yourself?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I should have maybe made that distinction a little clearer. So the Analyze dashboard in Survey 123 is strictly tied to your data that's coming out of your survey. So when you create a Survey 123 survey and you click that Publish button, you're actually creating a feature service in ArcGIS Online.
Mm-hmm.
So through your account, you have access to do that, and the Analyze portion of Survey 123 on the web will show you the results coming into that feature service from that survey. Now, the Web App Builder and the Web App Builder and Operations Dashboard, which we talked briefly about, are web applications. So those are kind of more generically meant for you to build, customize. You can absolutely bring in results from your survey, from multiple surveys, bring in things like weather layers, and build that kind of interaction between different widgets with those types of applications. Whereas the Analyze data on Survey 123 is just meant to give you a quick view of the data specifically for that survey, print it out, filter it, and analyze it, that kind of thing.
Great. So we have a question about credits, and I think I can maybe handle this one. Um, the question is whether that any of these apps that we've showed, whether they use credits. Um, so I guess the answer to that is that the apps themselves don't necessarily consume credits. Okay, so if you're using Survey123 or Collector, um, or any of the dashboards that we showed, none of those really cost any credits to your ArcGIS Online account. However, when you're collecting information through Survey123, Collector, etc., as Adam was saying, you're collecting that information as feature services that are hosted in the cloud. So you will be charged credits for the storage of the data that's there. But when we're thinking of, points, lines, polygons, of the types of activities that we see with mapping out, whether it's survey locations or building footprints, etc., it's relatively minimal when we're looking at storage costs there. And the storage costs are pretty well documented on ArcGIS Online, whether they're tiles or features, for example. And then if we're looking at this through an ArcGIS enterprise environment, so the evolution of ArcGIS server, any of the data that's collected in that environment is, there's no credits consumed there because that information is stored on your own infrastructure. So there might be cost recovery if you are implementing that infrastructure in the Amazon cloud or the Azure cloud, but not by Esri. It's more by your implementation and what's going on there. So I guess the last point on credits is if you're looking at the widgets, for example, in Web App Builder that pull on some of the services like the routing service, for example, or some of the analytical capabilities there like joining features or aggregating, etc. Um, those are accessing Esri's analytical services that are hosted in our cloud platform. So it's running compute on that system, and there are credits charged for running those processes in the cloud. But I encourage you to take a look at the breakdown of credits. So if you look at just ArcGIS Online credits, you'll see that when we're looking at geoprocessing services, for example, in the cloud, they're pretty minimal. So getting back to your original point about the data collection apps and dashboards, no credits are consumed outside of storage for the features that you're collecting there. So Adam, we got another question for you. What about using Survey123 offline? Can an organization collect data offline with Survey123?
Absolutely. Yep. And actually, I can drop a link into the chat window that will direct you to that and how you would prepare data and some considerations when taking your survey offline.
Okay, great. We appreciate that. Um, so there's another question kind of related to cost. It's asking about the apps and what they're free. So yeah, so pretty much every application that we showed you today is free through ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. So if you have a named user in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, then you have access to all of the applications we showed at no extra cost. There is an exception with Insights for ArcGIS. It's a new application. You implement it in your ArcGIS Enterprise Cloud, but of course it'll come on ArcGIS Online in December. And I'm actually unclear as to whether that will be a premium application or whether it's something that comes with ArcGIS Online. I just got word of the technological release recently, so that's something that we can maybe follow up on. But Ops Dashboard, Web App Builder, Configurable Applications, Survey123, Collector, Navigator, they're all free applications. Drone to Map is another one that's a premium application, so that incurs an extra cost. But yeah, most everything you saw here is you just get with your ArcGIS Online account or your ArcGIS Enterprise account. So Adam, we have another question about Survey 123. What's the difference between Survey 123 and, say, a geoform?
That's a that's a great question. Along with that question, we're often asked, how about collector for ArcGIS as well, right?
Right.
So we have quite a bit of field-based data collection applications, and we've actually, on the Survey 123 documentation page, there's a great matrix that shows a comparison of functionality for those three apps. So I'm going to actually click send to all, and hopefully it will send it out and everybody can see it. Responding to, I believe, Pascal, that was a great question. Thank you for asking it. So please let me know if you've received that answer, and if not, we can absolutely try to send it again. But I've also done the same with our previous question about how to collect offline data.
Great. So we have another question that's asking about the web environment and desktop application and kind of the future to GIS. And maybe I can offer my 2 cents about it, and Adam, if you want to offer your opinion, then you can as well. Um, they're asking about web workflows, desktop workflows, and considerations such as geo analytical modeling and geoprocessing. So, yeah, we get this question. There's kind of a fear that GIS is all going to be moved up into the web, and that kind of how we've worked in the past is going to go away with desktop compute resources, things like that. Um, that's not going to go away anytime soon, is the short answer. But what we're really seeing with the power of the web is to create, I guess, a constellation or a system of applications and capabilities that allows us to work across devices or across uh, across devices. So when we think of, for example, ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Pro, it's very tightly coupled with ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. And the reason being is you can take advantage of all those 1,000+ geoprocessing tools that are there, run local compute, create your analytical models there and run them locally. But there's a real strength in being able to publish those to ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise, which is ArcGIS Pro does very well. So publish geoprocessing services, publish data, etc. And then when it's there, it's available to all the applications we showed you in this webinar plus more. Okay, so you're unlocking the capabilities and the data of your organization so that's available to everyone. And that really enables you to provide the right data and capabilities to the right person. So if you're a GIS professional tuning in, you're going to be more likely to do data management, heavy analysis in ArcGIS Pro. But then there might be other people in your organization that aren't GIS professionals, but they need to take advantage of the geospatial capabilities that are provided through the platform. So they might access that information through a web app that possibly you configure to deliver just the QA and QC capabilities for your editing workflow that they need. Or you might deliver GIS capabilities through Survey 123 or Collector for ArcGIS, where the end user is not a GIS professional, but they have capacity to collect information, and then that's shared back to the organization where it can be used by everyone. So the desktop, I wouldn't say the desktop workflows are going away, but they're shifting, right? And through the web, we're able to distribute information, data, capabilities through different applications that are suitable to everyone. So that's kind of a long answer, but I don't know, Adam, do you have any input on that?
No, I think that's spot on. I would just only add that the working on the desktop, and even going the next step, working on the command line has kind of come back into prominence with things like big data and machine learning. So the availability of these resources with the clouds is fantastic. And I think, Brendan, you hit it right on the head with the different types of users, and WebGIS is kind of that enablement factor. And I don't think desktop's going away at all. In fact, it's probably going to have a more prominent role as these larger data sets are actually, we make sense of them, right? Big data has kind of been a buzzword for the last couple of years. Now we're actually starting to dive into it and figure out what's meaningful and the right type of tools to use against it. And the web environment is only going to enable that further.
Great. So there's another question about, and I'm kind of monitoring the questions, Adam. If you see anything that is valuable, please speak up. But there's a question about examples of donor agencies or development organizations that are using tools to standardize data collection across a large number of projects. And this is a difficult question, right? Because with projects or organizations, there's generally a disconnect between centrally coordinated activities, then field office or coordinated activities, and then to add to the mix, there's also the project or program-based activities. So you could have a single organization that's distributed globally that's kind of fits into any or all of these categories of how they organize themselves, and that influences data flows, right? But what we're seeing is with the capability to, as Adam showed, generate these Survey 123 applications or data models that and generate these information products, these configurations of information, as that becomes much easier. You don't need a custom developed application to do some of these things. Then it becomes easier to roll these out from a more central approach to different, whether it's field or programmatic organizations. And with that, when your data becomes a little bit more standardized and you have alignment in the way that you're gathering information for key indicators, et cetera, then everyone benefits, right? So I guess the short answer is that it's a struggle to implement data collection or an analysis across programs and or geographic field offices, for example. But I think with this paradigm, it's becoming easier. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't know, Adam, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, nothing to add. I think that's a great way to put it and to frame it.
Cool. So Adam, is it possible to customize Survey 123 through coding?
I believe so. I need to double check on it because Survey 123 was actually built using App Studio for ArcGIS, which is another application builder application.
Right.
It's something you can install on your desktop, and you can actually configure mobile applications without any coding. But at the same time, it gives you access to the code base. So if you're a developer, you can take that and make your own customizations. So I'd encourage you to go check on Survey 123, the website, and I believe they have open sourced the code. So that's something you can use within your own organization.
Cool. Good to know. So there's a question or maybe a shout out to the ArcGIS plugin for Excel. So ArcGIS Maps for Office which integrates with Excel and PowerPoint. And there's a question about whether the Excel plugin, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the plugin, again, with your named user, it's a free application. It extends Excel, allows you to take your data that's stored in tables and easily visualize those as maps, through geocoding, either lat longs or through place names. And it allows you to quickly publish those maps and layers to your ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise GIS portal. So I guess one point I wanted to make is that it does integrate with Survey 123 in a certain sense that when you're collecting off of Survey 123, you're able to, so that data is being collected as a service, as a layer in your portal, and you can actually pull that information down into Excel, into Maps for Office. So you have access through that plugin to all your data that's in your GIS portal. So there's no direct link between Microsoft Excel and ArcGIS Maps for Office and Survey 123. But again, getting back to that WebGIS paradigm and having everything in the cloud and the GIS portal as layers and web maps allows you to take advantage of information that's created or ingested from different applications in a number of different applications. So your Survey 123 data you're capturing can be used in countless number of applications, including ArcGIS Maps for Atlas. They all integrate because they all connect to that GIS portal. I think that's all the questions that we've got time for right now, unless there's a couple that we want to close up with. Adam, was there anything that you wanted to address?
No, I don't believe so. I don't see any other questions.
And if we did miss any, there's a lot coming through. If we did miss any, we'll go back and look at these and follow up with you after the webinar. But I think with that, I think we can maybe just wrap up. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for everyone for sticking around for the Q&A afterwards. Again, I encourage you to go to go.esri.com/SDG webinars to both look at our past webinars. This one will be up there as a recording soon as well. And then also sign up for our next webinar on November 14th at 8:30 a.m. PST. And then encourage you to take a look at these applications we showed. Hopefully they can support you in your monitoring and evaluation workflows. We will be following up with an email. In that email, maybe Adam and I can post some links to useful resources that can help you get started with some of these tools. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Adam, anything else you wanted to wrap up with?
Nope. Thank you very much.
All right, everyone. So we'll see you next time, and thanks for tuning in.